The fluorescent lights flickered above the beige hallway, casting a sterile glow on the plastic flowers wilting in their vase. I sat on the edge of a bed that wasn't mine, hands folded tightly in my lap, staring at a crack in the linoleum floor. My name is Evelyn Harper, 68 years old, and yesterday, my daughter, Claire, dropped me off at Sunset Pines nursing home with a smile and a promise to visit soon. She didn't. The nurse handed me a form with Claire's signature scrawled across it: residential admission, medical consent, observation status. For your safety, she'd said, her voice dripping with rehearsed kindness. Safety. The word felt like a slap. I wasn't sick. I wasn't confused. I was betrayed. My heart pounded as I replayed the moment Claire hugged me goodbye, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar. She'd called me a burden, hadn't she? Not in those exact words, but in the way she sighed when I spilled coffee on the counter, or how she rolled her eyes when I asked her to slow down while explaining her new job. I'd raised her alone after her father left us, scraping by on diner tips and late-night sewing gigs. I sold my mother's sapphire ring to pay for her college textbooks. I thought love was a circle, always coming back around, but Claire had drawn a line instead, and it ended here, in this room, with no windows, and a stranger's name on the door. I wasn't always this quiet woman, folding her pain like laundry. In my youth, I was fire dancing at juke joints, laughing too loud, dreaming of a life bigger than the small Georgia town I called home. Cancer took that fire when I was 45, but I fought it with every ounce of my soul, clawing my way back to health for Claire. I thought she saw that strength. I thought she knew me, but she saw an old woman, a weight to carry, and she'd unburdened herself by locking me away. The first night, I didn't sleep. The mattress creaked, and the air smelled of bleach and regret. I thought of my house, my garden of lavender and marigolds, the creaky porch swing where I'd read Claire bedtime stories. She was living there now. Her husband, Mark, probably sprawled on my couch, sipping beer from my fridge. They'd moved in a month ago, claiming it was temporary, while I recovered from a dizzy spell. I didn't know they'd already changed the locks. I didn't know Claire had told the neighbors I was slipping, her voice soft with fake pity. I didn't know she'd sold my car to pay for their new kitchen. By morning, anger replaced shock. I asked the nurse for a phone. Visiting hours only, she said, her eyes avoiding mine. I demanded to see the administrator. She was a thin woman with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your daughter said you've had confusion spells. Mrs. Harper, we're here to keep you safe. Safe. There it was again. I wanted to scream, but I'd learned long ago that screaming makes you look crazy, and crazy gets you locked up tighter. So I nodded, my lips pressed into a line, and returned to my room. That's when I started planning. I wasn't senile. I wasn't dying. I was Evelyn Harper, the woman who'd stitched prom dresses by hand, who'd balanced budgets on napkins, who'd survived chemo and heartbreak. Claire thought she'd buried me, but I was a seed, and seeds don't stay buried. They break through. I asked for a notebook, claiming I wanted to journal. The night nurse, a kind woman named Rosa, handed me a spiral pad and a pen. I didn't write memories. I wrote facts, bank account numbers, the lawyer I hadn't called in years, the deed to my house still in my name. I listed every sacrifice, every skipped meal, every extra shift, every tear I'd hidden so Claire could have a future. And I wrote down her betrayal, word for word, as she'd stood in my kitchen a month ago. Mom, you can't keep up anymore. You're too much for us. Too much. Those words burned, but they also lit a fire. My lawyer, Susan Grant, was semi-retired, but she'd always said I was her favorite client. I hadn't spoken to her since I'd updated my will after my husband left. I called her from the facility's payphone, my voice steady despite the tremble in my hands. Susan, it's Evelyn. My daughter's locked me in a nursing home and taken my house. I need you. She didn't hesitate. I'm on my way. Susan arrived the next day, her silver hair pulled back, her eyes sharp with indignation. She demanded every document the facility had. The staff scrambled, their confidence crumbling under her glare. "This is elder abuse," she said, her voice low but lethal. "We're getting you out, and we're going after Claire." For the first time in days, I felt my heart lift, like a bird breaking free from a cage. We discovered Claire had forged a power of attorney, claiming I was incompetent. She'd frozen my bank account, rerouted my mail, and transferred my utility bills to her name. But she'd made a mistake. The house deed was still mine. I'd never signed it over. Susan filed an emergency motion to revoke the forged POA and requested a capacity evaluation. The facility's doctor, a quiet man with kind eyes, confirmed I was sharp as ever. No dementia, no confusion, just a mother betrayed. I left Sunset Pines on a rainy Tuesday, carrying nothing but a small bag of clothes Susan had bought me. Freedom tasted like wet asphalt and hope. We didn't go to my house. Claire was still there, oblivious to my escape. Instead, Susan booked us into a hotel while we planned. "What do you want, Evelyn?" she asked. I looked out the window, rain streaking the glass, and said, "I want my life back, and I want Claire to feel what she did." Susan grinned. "Then let's go biblical." We filed for a partition sale of the house. Since I was the sole owner, I could force its sale, and Claire and Mark would have to vacate. If they resisted, the courts would send sheriffs. Every dime would come to me. I pictured Claire in my kitchen, sipping wine she couldn't afford, bragging about her new start. She'd stolen my home, but I was about to steal her security. The paperwork was served at 6 a.m. Claire's scream echoed through the neighborhood. According to Susan's process server, Mark slammed the door, his face pale. I didn't need to see it. Knowing was enough. That night, Claire called me, her voice shaking. "Mom, how could you—" "We were helping you." I let her words hang, then said, "You didn't help me. Claire, you erased me. You have 30 days to leave." I hung up before she could respond. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I breathed, deep and slow, and felt the weight of my pain start to lift. This was just the beginning. The hotel room smelled of fresh linen and possibility, a stark contrast to the stale air of Sunset Pines. I sat at the small desk, my notebook open, pen scratching as I mapped out my next steps with Susan. The house sale was only the first blow. Claire and Mark thought they could erase me, but I was rewriting the story. I wasn't just taking back my home. I was building a life that would outshine their betrayal. Susan leaned over, her glasses slipping down her nose. "Evelyn, the sale will give you a clean slate. What's next?" I tapped my pen against the page. "I want to live where they can't ignore me. Somewhere close, somewhere they'll see me every day." The idea hit me like lightning. Buy the house across the street. It was a modest brick rancher, for sale since the neighbors moved to Florida. I'd watch their kids play in the yard from my porch, back when Claire still called me Mom, without that edge in her voice. The thought of sitting on that new porch, sipping tea while Claire and Mark packed their bags, sent a thrill through me. Not vengeance, justice. Susan raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Bold. I like it. We moved fast. The house sale was finalized in 10 days. A young couple, thrilled to buy their first home, shook my hand at closing. I wished them well. My heart lighter, knowing my old house, the one I'd poured my soul into, would be loved again. The proceeds landed in my account, a sum large enough to buy the rancher outright and leave plenty for what I planned next. Susan handled the purchase, and within a week, I held the keys to my new home. I didn't tell Claire. I didn't tell anyone, not even my grandson, Ethan, Claire's 15-year-old son, who'd been distant since his parents moved into my house. Moving day was a quiet affair. Susan helped me carry boxes, and Rosa, the nurse from Sunset Pines, who'd quit after seeing too many mistakes like mine, brought me a potted lavender plant as a housewarming gift. I stood on the porch, my Sunday hat perched proudly, and watched the street. My old house. Claire's stolen castle sat across the road, its curtains drawn. I planted roses that afternoon, deep red ones, that bloomed like defiance along the fence. Every thorn was a reminder. I was still here, still sharp, still alive. Claire noticed me on the third day. I was watering my roses when her car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, her face pale, her eyes darting to my new porch. Mark followed, his jaw tight. They didn't wave. They didn't speak. They just stared. And I stared back, my watering can steady in my hands. That evening, my phone buzzed. Claire's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, what are you doing? This is crazy. You're humiliating us." Her voice cracked, but I heard no regret, only embarrassment. I didn't call back. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Old Mrs. Jenkins, who'd known me since Claire was in diapers, stopped by with a pie. "Heard what Claire did," she said, her eyes soft. "You're stronger than I'd be." I smiled, slicing her a piece. "Strength's all I've got left, Mabel." But it wasn't true. I had more anger, purpose, and a plan that was just beginning to unfold. Susan uncovered more of Claire's schemes. She'd used my bank account to pay for a new car, claiming it was for caregiving expenses. She'd even applied for a loan in my name, forging my signature again. Each discovery was a knife twist. But it also fueled me. I wasn't just fighting for my house. I was fighting for every woman who'd been discarded, every mother who'd been called a burden. I started volunteering at the community center, helping elderly women navigate legal aid. I shared my story, not for pity, but to warn them, trust can be a trap. Ethan showed up one evening, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked taller than I remembered, his eyes heavy with something unspoken. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded, stepping aside. He sat at my kitchen table, staring at the roses through the window. "They told me you were sick," he said. "Said you couldn't live alone." I poured him iced tea, the same recipe I'd made when he was little, scared of the dark. "I'm not sick, Ethan. I never was." He nodded, slow, like he was piecing together a puzzle. He started coming over more, helping me weed the garden or carry groceries. He didn't talk much about Claire or Mark, but I saw the weight he carried. He was caught between parents who'd lied and a grandmother they'd tried to erase. One night, he asked, "Why'd you buy this house?" "Grandma, to make them mad." I set down my trowel, dirt smudging my hands. "Not mad, Ethan. Awake. They need to see what they did." He didn't reply, but he stayed late, helping me plant marigolds until the moon rose. Claire's life across the street began to crack. Mark's car was gone more often, and neighbors whispered about arguments loud enough to hear through open windows. Claire threw garden parties, her laughter forced, her guests glancing at my roses with knowing looks. She posted on social media about her perfect life, but the photos showed a woman trying too hard. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Her world was unraveling, and I was just getting started. The addictive twist came on a quiet Sunday. Susan called, her voice electric. "Evelyn, we found something big." She dug into Claire's financials and discovered she'd been siphoning money from my retirement account for years. Long before the nursing home, small withdrawals, hidden in household expenses, totaling thousands. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft, deliberate and calculated. My heart sank, then soared. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about justice, raw and undeniable. "We can press charges," Susan said. "Fraud, elder exploitation. The works?" I leaned back, my roses glowing in the dusk. "Do it," I said. "Let's finish this." That night, I sat on my porch, the air thick with summer heat. Across the street, Claire's porch light flickered, then went out. I sipped my tea, the taste sweet and sharp. Like victory, I wasn't broken. I was unbreakable, and Claire was about to learn what that meant. It was a calculated theft, stretching back 5 years. Claire had been draining my retirement account, siphoning off small amounts she thought I'd never notice. Each withdrawal was a quiet stab, hidden behind grocery receipts and utility bills. I sat at my kitchen table, Susan's documents spread before me, my hands trembling. Not with fear, but with a fury so deep it felt holy. Claire hadn't just locked me away. She'd been robbing me blind while calling me Mom. The betrayal cut deeper than the nursing home, deeper than the forged signatures. It was as if she'd erased every sacrifice I'd made, every late shift at the diner, every night spent sewing until my fingers bled, every dream I'd buried to give her a future. Susan's voice crackled with determination. "We've got her, Evelyn. This is enough for criminal charges, elder financial abuse, fraud, maybe even identity theft. You say the word, and we'll bury her in court." I looked out the window at my roses, their red petals glowing under the streetlight. Across the street, Claire's house was dark, the curtains still drawn. I imagined her inside, oblivious, planning her next garden party to mask the cracks in her life. "Do it," I said, "but I want more than a courtroom. I want her to see me rise." The legal wheels turned fast. Susan filed charges, and we submitted evidence to the district attorney. Bank statements, forged documents, even emails Claire had sent to Mark about handling Mom's money. The DA was eager a case like this, with a clear paper trail and a sympathetic victim, was a prosecutor's dream. But I wasn't a victim. I was a warrior, and this was my battlefield. While the legal case built, I focused on my new life. I painted my porch swing a bright yellow, a color Claire once said was too loud for an old lady. I baked cornbread for the neighbors, chatted with the mailman, and joined a book club at the community center. Every step was a declaration. I wasn't gone. I was here. Louder than ever, Ethan became my shadow. He'd show up after school, his skateboard under one arm, his eyes searching for something stable. One afternoon, as we planted tomatoes, he broke the silence. "Mom said you're doing this to hurt her, that you're bitter." I wiped dirt from my hands, meeting his gaze. "Ethan, I'm not bitter. I'm free. Your mom thought she could bury me, but she forgot who I am." He looked down, kicking a pebble. "She's not happy, Dad either. They fight all the time now." My heart ached for him, caught in their storm, but I couldn't carry their guilt. I handed him a trowel. "Plant something," I said. "It'll grow stronger than their lies." Claire's facade crumbled faster than I expected. The charges hit the local news, a small segment, but enough to make the neighborhood whisper. "Local woman accused of defrauding elderly mother." The headline read, "Claire stopped hosting parties. Her car stayed parked, and Mark's was rarely seen." I heard from Mrs. Jenkins that Claire had been crying at the grocery store, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't care. I was too busy living. I started painting again, small canvases of sunflowers and stormy skies. My hands steady, despite the years. The community center hung one in their lobby, and strangers began asking about my story. I told it plain. My daughter thought I was done. She was wrong. The addictive twist, the moment that would hook anyone watching, came on a humid August evening. I was on my porch, sketching a rose, when Claire appeared at my gate. Her hair was messy, her eyes red. She clutched a manila envelope, her hand shaking. "Mom," she said, her voice small, "can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. I pointed to the porch steps. She sat, the envelope crinkling in her lap. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. "I was scared. You were dizzy that day. And Mark said, we couldn't afford to take care of you. The nursing home was supposed to be temporary." I let her words hang, heavy in the air. "Temporary," I repeated. "You sold my car. You took my money. You changed my locks." She flinched, tears spilling. "I thought I was protecting you." I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. "You weren't protecting me, Claire. You were protecting yourself. You saw me as a burden, not a mother." She sobbed, but I felt no urge to comfort her. I'd spent years comforting her through heartbreaks, job losses, her father's abandonment. This time, she'd face the consequences alone. She slid the envelope toward me. "It's an apology," she said, "and a plan to pay you back." I didn't touch it. "Keep it," I said. I don't need your promises. I needed my daughter. She left without another word, her shadow long and broken on the sidewalk. Ethan came over that night, his face pale. Mom's a mess, he said. She says you hate her. I set a plate of peach cobbler in front of him. I don't hate her. Ethan, I love her enough to let her learn. He ate in silence, but I saw the question in his eyes. How do you love someone who hurts you? I didn't have an answer yet, but I was learning, too. The court date loomed, and Susan was relentless. She'd uncovered more. Claire had used my money to fund a side business, a boutique that failed within a year. Every dollar she'd spent was a piece of my life she'd stolen. I didn't want revenge for the sake of cruelty. I wanted justice for the years I'd given her. I wanted her to understand that love doesn't mean ownership. As the neighborhood watched, I kept planting, painting, living. My roses bloomed brighter. My porch swing creaked with new stories, and Ethan's laughter filled my kitchen. Claire's house, once loud with parties, was now a ghost of itself, its windows dark, its joy gone. I stood on my porch, watching the stars, and felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Claire's trial would come, but I was already free. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And that was the sharpest blade of all. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and nervous sweat. I sat in the front row, my hands folded, my Sunday hat perched proudly. Claire stood at the defendant's table, her eyes downcast, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. Mark was nowhere to be seen. He'd left town a week earlier, neighbors said, his car packed with boxes and shame. The judge, a stern woman with silver streaks in her hair, read through Susan's evidence. The forged power of attorney, the siphoned retirement funds, the loan in my name. Each document was a brick in the wall of Claire's guilt, and I watched her shrink under its weight. I didn't feel joy, but I felt something close to peace, a quiet certainty that justice was unfolding, slow and steady, like a river carving stone. Susan was a force, her voice cutting through the room as she laid out Claire's crimes. Evelyn Harper, a woman who survived cancer, raised a daughter alone, and built a life from nothing, was betrayed by that daughter. Claire Harper exploited her mother's trust, stole her savings, and confined her to a nursing home against her will. The courtroom was silent, every eye on Claire, who looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. When it was her turn to speak, she mumbled an apology, her voice barely audible. I thought I was helping, she said, tears streaking her face. I didn't mean to hurt her. The judge's gaze was unyielding. Intent doesn't erase impact. Ms. Harper, the verdict came swiftly. Guilty of elder financial abuse and fraud. Claire was ordered to repay every cent she'd taken. Prud'hommage, probation, not prison, but the financial penalty was steep. Her boutique's failure had left her with little, and now she'd lose more. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I nodded to Susan, who squeezed my hand and walked out into the sunlight. The air tasted clean, like the first breath after a storm. Claire's punishment wasn't my victory. My victory was the life I'd rebuilt from her ashes. Back home, my roses were in full bloom, their scent mingling with the lemon polish in my kitchen. Ethan had practically moved in, his skateboard propped by the door, his laughter a constant hum. He was 16 now, his eyes brighter, his shoulders less hunched. One evening, as we baked cornbread, he asked, "Grandma, do you forgive her?" I paused, the mixing bowl heavy in my hands. Forgiveness isn't a gift, Ethan, it's a choice. I choose to let go of the anger. But I don't forget the lesson. He nodded, thoughtful, and I saw the boy I'd raised in him, the one Claire had tried to pull away. I poured my energy into the community center, founding the Harper Legacy Fund with the house sale proceeds and damages from Claire's case. It supported elderly women facing abuse or abandonment, offering legal aid, counseling, and emergency housing. I spoke at their events, my voice steady as I shared my story. They'll call you old, I told the crowd, mostly women with gray hair and tired eyes. They'll call you a burden, but you're not. You're a foundation, and foundations don't crumble. The applause was soft, but fierce, and I felt their strength echo mine. I wasn't alone anymore. I was part of something bigger. Claire moved out a month after the trial. A U-Haul sat in her driveway one dawn, and by noon, she was gone. Neighbors said she'd rented an apartment across town, her life stripped to essentials. She didn't call, didn't write. I heard through Ethan that she was working at a call center, her dreams of boutiques and garden parties buried under debt. I didn't wish her pain, but I didn't wish her well either. I'd spent too long carrying her weight. Now, I carried only my own. The neighborhood embraced me. Mrs. Jenkins brought pies weekly, and the book club argued over who'd host me next. I painted more, my canvases growing bolder, storm clouds giving way to sunrises, roses tangled with thorns. Ethan hung them in my living room, proud, and started sketching himself, his pencil scratching late into the night. He asked to stay permanently, and I filed for guardianship. Claire didn't contest it. She says she's not fit right now. Ethan told me, his voice quiet. I hugged him tight, my heart cracking open with love, not pain. One Sunday, as I sat on my porch, a letter arrived. Claire's handwriting, shaky and unfamiliar. Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong, and I'll spend my life making it right. I hope you're happy. I read it once, then tucked it away. Happiness wasn't her gift to give. It was mine to claim. I looked across the street at the young couple in my old house, their laughter spilling from open windows. They'd invited me for dinner last week, calling me Miss Evelyn with respect I hadn't felt in years. My house was theirs now, and I was glad. It deserved joy. The lesson I'd learned wasn't about revenge, though the world might call it that. It was about resilience, about refusing to be erased, no matter who tries to write you out. I'd been called a burden, but I was a seed, breaking through concrete to bloom. I'd survived a daughter's betrayal, just as I'd survived cancer, loneliness, and loss. Each scar was a story, and I was still writing mine. To anyone watching, I'd say this: your worth isn't tied to what others take from you. It's in what you build, what you plant, what you refuse to let die. If they call you old, show them strength. If they call you a burden, show them power. And if they try to bury you, grow roots so deep, they'll never forget you were here. I did, and every morning, as I sipped tea on my porch, my roses blazing, I know peace not because I won, but because I chose to live